Hi, I'm Tom,
I'm Vincent.
and we're Studio Skillbard.
Here we are in Skillbard Studios, and here, now we see me yesterday showing us around one of our live rooms. And we can show the from the start of the process to the end. We've got a little video capture that Evan and Jeremy made for us, so we can see what kind of things are going to be happening. And then we've got some bricks from a local brick site, what they call building site, and we're just going to start scraping them. Simple as heck.
So, looking at this interaction, we saw that there were kind of 3 moments of sounds needed. One where the mouse kind of rolls over the bricks and they're just kind of slightly nudged or rotated, and they don't actually fall out. And then when you actually click on the brick, that's when it falls, kind of crumbles out. And well, actually, there's kind of 2 main bits, but then we saw that there was kind of like a little kind of debris animation, and we thought we'd kind of record some small particle sounds, to have a kind of dusty debris sound as well. And those are the kind of 3 elements that we're going for.
But since the sort of the little debris is quite magical, we don't think we'll make too much of a realistic recording of that. We'll probably supplement it with some sound, some music later, or some synthy twinkling or something. Well, let's see. Let's get into it, shall we?
Let's get into it.
Does it record audio though? It did. Here we are setting up. You see, for this sort of thing, you want a studio with a very dead sound. So here we've chosen a part of our live room where there's sound treatment and you can't really hear any reverb and stuff like that. So we can really focus in on the little sound we're recording and be able to, well, actually the interaction happens outside, so it'll have no reverb or anything at all. Oh, I've got cracking. Like that? That was quite a nice little, gentle. That's it, really. No, but
Bricks.
I've got these separate bricks around me. Tom's in the next room. It's unfortunate, actually, he won't be able to hear our conversation. We forgot to record Tom talking.
You're not really missing anything.
Nice. There's this little bit of rock I'm running against blue rock. This is really how it happens. You can't always tell how something's going to sound under the microphone. As well, isn't it? So when I was grabbing these rocks from about the place and scraping them together, I could guess which one I think would be our favourite, but you can't tell until you're in there, really. So you need to have a little scrape around. Oh, lovely. Oh, you decide. Little scrapes. Like. Tom in the control room can hear a lot better than me how it sounds, so he's directing me on what sounds best and stuff like that. Don't need to watch the whole thing in real time.
Oh, this is us recording some little pop clops, which we thought might be useful for when the bricks pop out, like a poppy element.
It'll give a really satisfying feel to the gameplay.
But as you'll see, we found we needed to do a lot of kind of filtering to that kind of stuff.
Got to experiment.
Getting messy.
You notice I've got a little bit of foam, and we're working on the floor because having a table or something would introduce a different sound. You feel like the resonance of the wood of the table and stuff like that. So we like to do stuff on the floor sometimes. And a little bit of foam just to absorb any sound from dropping bits and stuff.
They're very high though.
Here we are doing the sort of twinkly debris recordings.
Try picking out smaller parts that'll be less resonant.
I'm going to try picking up smaller parts that'll be less resonant there.
Yeah, it should be less loud in a sec.
I'm not sure why we didn't speed this bit up. It's important to protect your hands, guys.
Get good thick gloves.
Yeah. But also you need to make sure they're not too loud.
It's flaky, isn't it?
You need to consider the fabric of the gloves and all the clothes you're wearing and stuff like that.
Smash them up.
It's not a fashion show, guys. Need to make sure everything's silent.
Let me come down. Sec. I've got a big concrete slab.
I've got a big concrete slab you'll see me get now.
It's extremely heavy.
It's heavy.
Vincent had to train for weeks to be able to lift this weight.
And still you hear me do a little sway. And here we wanted even smaller bits, so I was smashing some little bits of the debris up. That we're not using, we just
That was a very
cool.
nice sound, but we might use it on something else.
Yeah. Despite what I've just said, you can hear my keys jangling. I usually tuck them in. Oh, there you can see on the
Oh, yeah.
screen.
Pebbles.
But since I'm not moving my booty, you don't hear them jangling, so it's okay. Here I went and collected some pebbles from a plant pot somewhere else in the studio, but it didn't really sound that good. But then we mixed it in with some of the clay shards, and that was all right. This is just me packing up. I couldn't find the end of the Hoover, so I had to just use the novel manually. We like a nice clean studio.
Okay, here we are in Logic, which is our DAW.
Digital audio workstation.
Yeah. This is where we're chopping and editing the audio before we import it into Fmod.
Just choosing all the recordings we liked. It's often surprising at this stage, I find, that the recordings I like here are not the ones I liked when we were recording them. Do you find that?
Always.
Always. And then again, when you're syncing up to the picture, it can be surprising which bits work. It's always bits that happen when you're not performing the thing you're looking at.
You get very influenced by the object you're holding in your hands and what you imagine it to be. And when you're just listening to the audio on its own, you're often surprised.
So it's important to get a lot of different recordings and sometimes a lot of different styles of performing the Foley and stuff like that. So then you got some stuff to work with later.
This bit is the recording of pebbles for the kind of debris scattery sound, and we didn't like a few of these frequencies, and we're just kind of notching them out.
Some of the shards were a little too resonant. Just, spend some time trying to make it a softer, smoother sound.
Still sounds a bit gross though.
Yeah, it does a little bit. But it is going to be supplemented by something else. So this sort of tonality might interact nicely with little sprinkles we might put on later.
And also one thing is this is the first kind of iteration or attempt at the sound. Often once we have it in the game, we might reevaluate what's needed, and it's all about doing revisions and iterations on an idea.
And that's why we're not getting back in there and doing more recording to make it absolutely perfect right now, because we're pretty sure we're going to be doing that after we get our hands on the gameplay.
So that was editing the sounds, and now we're going to put them in Fmod, which is our middleware software on this project.
Which means it's kind of like a sound sequencer, just like the Logic we've just seen, but it connects with the game. It's like a non-linear type of workstation.
And it's really useful for sound designers because we can set up some of the logic and systems without needing to program, and without Jeremy and Evan needing to program lots of, like, they don't need to do much scripting. Well, they still need to do a bunch of scripting for the audio, but way less than if they were doing it all in Unreal's audio engine.
So what that means is, well, we do what you're seeing here. We've got a kind of sampler, and then we've loaded in a lot of the sounds we've recorded and set it to play a sound randomly. So as you swipe over the bricks, you won't hear the same sound every time. And then we save this project and sync it, and then Jeremy on the other end in New York will connect it up to Unreal. But it's a lot less work than if we just handed him a bunch of sounds and told him how we expect it to behave.
Okay, this bit is self-explanatory. We're talking to Evan.
Quite often we'll be working on something, and then we'll realise we don't actually know quite how the interaction works yet, because we tend to start work with a screen capture that Evan's made, so we can see how things move and stuff like that. So then we record, and then we make the little instrument in Fmod, and then we get it connected up, and then we can check how it feels in the gameplay when we actually play the game. But sometimes we got a couple of little questions for Evan, and he's always, or Jeremy, both of them, always very happy to chat about this stuff.
So I think what we were doing here was realizing how we were going to implement, and we realized we could build 3 layers for this sound. A scrape, a clop or a pop, and the debris. Okay, here we're putting a bit of pitch randomization on the randomized scrape sounds.
Just to give it a further bit of variation, so it doesn't feel like you're hearing the same thing over and over. Tom works very quickly.
I work 8 times the normal speed. Auditioning the scrapes. Putting those pops in.
This isn't just a loop, by the way. Each time we're pressing play up there, it's as if someone's just hovered over a brick in the game.
Put in a bit of pitch randomization and a little bit of volume randomization. We think the scrape might actually be a bit too long once it's in the game. And now we're creating the track for the particle debris type of thing. We set it to loop, and we also set the playhead to be randomized so that it doesn't always start at the beginning of that sample. It will just randomly jump to a different point. So it should have a lot of variation.
But this time we chose to use just one sound because we didn't want too much variation with that. Because that could sound like a cacophony.
Mm. Trying it at different pitches. Can't remember what I was doing now. It was only yesterday.
That sounds like the kind of pitch. We pitch things around a lot. Sometimes it seems like recordings are more real when you've pitched them, make them deeper. Because you're talking about bricks, you expect to hear a deep sound, but then if you actually touch a brick, it's not as heavy sounding as you'd expect. So a little bit of cheating can actually make it seem more realistic. Talking general Foley and stuff here.
Okay, now we're creating separate events. So one for the brick popping out when you click it, one for the mouse just rolling over the bricks and gently disturbing them. Okay, here we're going back into Logic to grab some very gentle brick sounds just for when you roll over them with the mouse. Tidying them up.
Chosen some nice ones.
Bouncing them.
Bouncing is like the audio term for render, by the way.
Lobbing them in to a multi-instrument, which will randomly shuffle and play a different one each time. Auditioning.
They already sound lovely. Just popping that randomization on again. Put it on everything really.
Yes, so we wanted to supplement the pebbles that we recorded. So we grabbed a kind of dusty debris sample from a library. We're going to lob that in on top to see if it adds a bit of kind of high-end particle dusty sound, make it a bit more dramatic. We're applying similar settings to that.
Sounding good.
Should we talk about this kind of stuff?
Go on then. I just thought of another reason we chose to do this for our friends on the stream, and that's because it was something we just had to do. It was just next on our to-do list.
We thought it would be more interesting to show us actually kind of approaching a problem and how we would work, rather than just recreating something. So if it looks like we're kind of bumbling around a bit, it's because we were figuring this one out. I'm just changing the attack on this dusty bit so it comes in a bit more gently.
I guess this is kind of typical of the like naturalistic, realistic sound effects process in this game. Sometimes we spend a bit more time affecting recordings before we'll plop them into the game. This one was just straight up, we needed a brick sound, so we recorded some bricks. Part of the reason we're doing it now. Less fiddling around. But yeah, this tends to be the way it goes when we do Foley recordings. Other work would be working with synthesizers and stuff like that to create less realistic sounds, which sound more interesting but is much more boring to watch.